Hey everybody, this is Mr. Mob coming at you with another APUSH video. Once again, we're taking a look at topic 8.8, the Vietnam War. Last time we talked about the origins of the war and how the United States, was interested about what's going on in a Southeast Asian country like Vietnam, and how we were gradually, having more of a presence in Vietnam, starting first with financial aid with Truman, then adding a few hundred advisors under Eisenhower, to then a few thousand advisors under Kennedy that are actually doing some real fighting on the ground against the communists, to now where we are with the new president, Lyndon Johnson. And we mentioned Johnson's, very strong desire to stop the spread of communism in Vietnam because of the domino theory. If Vietnam falls to communism, so will all of the other neighboring countries in Southeast Asia. So if you want to stop, Southeast Asia from completely falling to communism, you got to hold the line in Vietnam. So this then, is going to lead to a pivotal moment in the history of the Vietnam War, and this is going to be the Gulf of Tonkin incident. The Gulf of Tonkin is just off the coast of North Vietnam, and the United States Maddox, the USS Maddox, is going to be an American gunboat that will be fired upon. Now, at the time, it was believed that the North Vietnamese had fired on that boat. And in response to that, Johnson goes to Congress and says, listen, we have now been directly attacked by NVA forces, and we have to respond with we have to have a full military response. Now, Johnson is going to be asking for what is, in essence, a blank check to fight the war in Vietnam. It's not an official declaration of war, but it is going to be a congressional authorization for the president to not just direct troops, as the president's constitutional responsibility includes being commander-in-chief, but actually taking on responsibilities that are constitutionally allocated for Congress in terms of determining funding levels for the military, and being able to determining troop levels to be sent to go fight. So Johnson's going to be asking for this, and he will get it. He will only have two members of Congress that will vote against what will come to be known as the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution. Now, note, this whole incident that sparks this tremendous turning over of power militarily to Johnson is based on an assumed NVA attack on the Maddox. We come to find out later on that it wasn't done by the NVA. It's likely done by accident by South Vietnamese forces. But nonetheless, we are in it. And what do we mean by in it if it's not a declaration of war? Well, in essence, it is going to be a dramatic escalation of America's involvement militarily in Vietnam. What had been previously a South Vietnamese war of defense with American assistance is now almost overnight going to be changing into an American war with the South Vietnamese helping us in South Vietnam. So this is going to really, really change everything. For most Americans, they tend to think of the Gulf of Tonkin incident as kind of the unofficial start of the Vietnam War, at least as we come to kind of recognize it. And, when this happens, we will see, as you can see in this graph here, a dramatic increase in U.S. troop levels in Vietnam over the next 4 years, going from, about 20,000 when Johnson takes over to by the time we go 4 years later into it, you're talking about well over 500,000 troops in country in South Vietnam. And by the time we get to the summer of 1968, you're looking at, tens of thousands of American casualties, including 16,000 American soldiers that will be killed. So this is going to turn almost on a dime into this massive fight now militarily for the United States. And what is this fight going to look like? Well, one of the things that we have to kind of be aware of is that the goal of the United States in this military conflict is not to conquer all of Vietnam. In many respects, it's going to be similar to what we were trying to accomplish in Korea. Defend the South, make it a limited war to defend South Vietnam's territorial integrity. Now, one of the things that is going to be very important about this conflict that we hadn't seen before in American history is the type of media coverage. Prior to the Vietnam War, media coverage of things like World War II and even World War I a little bit before that was very pro-military, pro-American government media coverage, almost propaganda unto itself. If you saw, newsreels from World War II, it was always about American success and things like that. This is going to be different. This is going to be the first, what we would truly call, televised war in American history. I mean, yeah, the Korean War was happening when television was out, but most Americans didn't have television during the Korean War, and there was limited media coverage. This is going to be something different. We're going to be seeing Americans in their homes every night getting story after story after story, report after report of what's going on in Vietnam. And it's not going to be pretty. Americans are going to be reminded every day of the death and destruction going on in that country. Now, a lot of it is going to be, broadcasting the fact that we are going to be killing a lot of Vietnamese there. And, we're going to be killing hundreds of thousands of Vietnamese communists over the next several years. And the media is certainly going to be reporting on that. And that will be perceived by many Americans, at least initially, as a sign that we are successful over there. But at the same time, though, we are also seeing reports on more and more soldiers having to go. More and more soldiers starting to become drafted to be sent over there. More and more soldiers that are getting wounded and, yes, killed and coming back in body bags, And so Americans are seeing this. They're seeing the death. They're seeing the destruction of Vietnamese villages. They're seeing urban warfare in cities, like Hue. And so, this is going to be a living room war. And as this drags on, and every day as the casualty numbers grow and grow for American forces, this will over time have an impact on America's support for the war, which will then have an impact on the morale that U.S. troops will have in Vietnam. Now, something else that's going to be significant in terms of being able to, try to affect victory in war is trying to reduce the coordination of the NVA with the Viet Cong down here. And this is really going to be hampered in terms of the U.S. trying to do this through what's going to be known as the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Now, as you can see here in this map of Southeast Asia, you got Laos and Cambodia to the west, and here's North Vietnam in yellow and South Vietnam in green. What the Ho Chi Minh Trail is going to be in reality, it's not some paved bikeway or something. It's not a highway you can drive on. It's going to be the nickname for basically this underground supply network that's going to be existing that will allow the North Vietnamese to continuously resupply the Viet Cong in the south. And the way they're going to be able to do that is by going through neighboring Laos and Cambodia. Now, you might think, well, okay, so what? We just, go into Laos and Cambodia. Wrong. The Johnson administration is going to be strongly opposed to expanding the war into Laos and Cambodia. Remember, this is a limited war. If you start moving to Laos, Cambodia, you've expanded the war. So we're going to have to try to defeat the NVA, and more importantly, in this scenario, the VC, without having the ability to actually go after the supply chain that keeps resupplying the Viet Cong. So we might destroy a Viet Cong, supply area, and within a week it's resupplied again because of the Ho Chi Minh Trail. For many American soldiers, they will find this extremely frustrating because it will kind of seem like you're playing a football game, and you have to stay within, stay in bounds, so to speak. But your opponent is able to go out of bounds and go around the back and score touchdowns that way when you can't really defend against it. So this is going to be one of the many frustrations that American soldiers will face trying to defeat an enemy that seemingly is, constantly resupplied, and it seems like we have no way to really stop it. Now, when we talk about, some key strategies in this war in Vietnam, one of the important goals is to try to use a superior American military technology. And the core of this is going to be Operation Rolling Thunder. Operation Rolling Thunder was this massive sustained bombing operation that we will start in 1965 over North Vietnam. Now, the plan is not to send ground troops into North Vietnam, but a clear willingness to bomb and bomb and bomb North Vietnam as much as possible, short of using nuclear weapons. And when I say bomb, I mean bomb North Vietnam. We will actually drop more raw tonnage of bombs on North Vietnam than we will on Germany and Japan combined in World War II. So we bomb them and bomb them and bomb them. And yes, we're going to kill a lot of Vietnamese people. And the thought was, if you just bomb these folks enough, they will eventually have to submit. That was the idea. And in particular, bombing the capital city of North Vietnam, Hanoi, trying to bomb, places that might be sending things down the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Now, granted, many of these pilots that are going to be involved in Operation Rolling Thunder will get shot down and become POWs. Probably most famously John McCain, who will actually be spending upwards of 8 years as a North Vietnamese POW. But the plan was bomb these folks into submission to end the conflict. But in addition to traditional bombing, the United States is also going to be engaging in the use of some pretty nasty weaponry, including the use of napalm. For those of you that are not familiar with napalm, napalm is this kind of like, think of it as like a gasoline, highly flammable, jelly-like substance that when you drop it from a plane, it is highly, highly flammable. And when it detonates, you are going to see it splatter, and it will really not have much of a, much of the ability to kind of determine friend from foe. And places that were maybe suspected Viet Cong hideouts are just going to get splattered with napalm and burn villages to the ground. But also, as you saw briefly in that photo there, it's not going to discriminate between friend and foe or adult versus child. And so you're going to see a lot of folks that are basically innocent civilians that are going to become collateral damage through napalm. Villages destroyed, people severely burned, people killed. It's pretty nasty stuff, and it's not going to really help win over a lot of friends amongst the Vietnamese people. And once again, when we're talking about the Vietnamese people, in South Vietnam, you're talking about trying to figure out, who your friends are in South Vietnam. Who can you trust? Because the Viet Cong are going to be a very real presence down there. The idea being is, that person that might be, shining your shoes during the daytime and, giving you a thumbs up and saying America's great, might be somebody that night that is booby-trapping your Jeep and planning to blow you up. A sweet grandma that, might be, just kind of tending to her, her rice paddy, might be somebody that's, sharpening bamboo to try to kill you with a booby trap later on. So you didn't really know who was to trust. And that's going to be another problem for American soldiers. You never knew who you could trust. And this is going to lead to tremendous paranoia for American soldiers, especially given the resolve that these Viet Cong are going to have. When we talk about the Vietnamese communists, especially the Viet Cong, these are folks that are willing to endure horrific levels of casualties. Just horrific. And still keep fighting and still keep going and not surrender. And part of it is the reality that these are folks that are fighting for their home. Not like American soldiers that are an invading force. They're professional soldiers. They're doing a job. For the Vietnamese folks down here, they are fighting for their independence. They are fighting for what they believe is their way of life. And from their perspective, they've been doing that forever. If you're the Viet Cong, you've been trying for decades to achieve what you want to do. You first fought the French, then you fought the Japanese, then you fought the French again. Now you're fighting the Americans. Doesn't matter who the opponent is, you're still going to keep fighting. And that is really going to grind down American morale, because it really kind of makes us scratch our heads that we can massacre these people and they still don't quit. They still don't give up. That it just kind of defies conventional wisdom that you can just pound and pound and pound on an enemy and they don't give up. And that's going to help these folks win in the end, or part of the reason why it's going to help them win in the end. All right, we'll stop it there for now. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.